Most people succeed because they are determined to. People of mediocre ability sometimes achieve outstanding success because they don't know when to quit. George Allen, football coach.
What is the language of leadership? It is the skills, traits, lessons learned, communications, and inspirations of leaders. The Language of Leadership podcast will help you develop the successful tools renowned leaders have discovered and have used effectively, sharing with you how to be the leader you desire to be and the leader your team will desire to follow. Now, here is your host, Chuck Marting.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. I am your host, Chuck Marting. This week, what we're going to be talking about is a leadership principle of surrounding yourself with successful people. So I have a question for you to start this off. How can you increase your influence? The answer? Partnerships. If we constantly find ourselves surrounded by negativity, it can bring us down. On the other hand, if we surround ourselves with positive and supportive people, it can make a world of difference. Consider the last time you had a fantastic conversation or discussion with someone. It probably didn't involve celebrity gossip or chit-chat about the person who just got canned from their job. It was probably something a lot deeper. Perhaps it even made you think or laugh or feel connected in some way with that person that you're talking with. Compare that to a conversation you had where you felt drained afterwards. Chances are it was more superficial, focusing on things that didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. People impact the way you and I think, the way you feel, and the way you will act. Look at the people you know and that you're aware of. Negative people tend to hang out with negative people, and the positive people spend time with other positive people. Successful and wealthy people tend to hang out with other successful and wealthy people. Do you know people who only have to walk into a room to totally drain the room of the energy? Are there people in your life who simply by calling you on the telephone create tension, stress, and disorder in your day or your life? This is something that I have found as a leader that affects every aspect of your business and how you act as a leader. Having those experiences, whether it's team members or your clients or just a family, friend, anyone that can walk into your life and just drain that energy out of you. Well, what about that one person who brightens a room when they enter it? Do you have friends and mentors or others in your life who radiate energy, optimism, support, and encouragement? While it's always interesting to ask yourself what kind of person you are, the success principle to learn here is that there are both nourishing people in our lives and there are toxic ones. Toxic people are negative. They're dream stealers. And although they often don't know they're doing it, they dissuade us from our goals and they keep us from achieving excellence. They tell us we're not worthy and constantly attempt to bring us down to their level. But by contrast, positive people are nurturing, they're empowering, they're inspiring, encouraging, and supportive, protectively helpful. They believe in you and they applaud you. They're possibility thinkers. They're fun to be around and they feel you deserve to succeed at the highest possible level. So we're going to talk about how do you recognize a toxic person. So what we're going to do is an illustration that is pretty widespread with negativity in our culture. All right. So what I want you to do, unless you're driving, is to close your eyes for a moment. And I want you to imagine your neighbor. Your neighbor just won the lottery. Not a little jackpot, but $1 million a year for life. How do you feel? I can tell you most people feel resentful. Instead of responding with, way to go, one of my friends hit the lottery jackpot, most people react negatively. They're jealous and they feel resentful. Unfortunately, the negative reaction to this exercise is not too different from real life. In fact, some toxic people are actually addicted to negativity. Toxic personalities actually need to be kept from you because if not, they will keep you from succeeding at a higher level because you threaten their level of comfort. They're happy being negative and mediocre. Yet you threaten to expose this side of their personality when you're ambitious, you're goal-oriented, you're forward-thinking, or you're positive. So to counteract this type of a threat, you and toxic people have to be discouraged when they're around you. They have to be discouraged from moving ahead and talking to you about those things. And you're going to recognize individuals that thrive on toxicity or these type of things when they talk to you, because they're going to say things like, oh, who are you kidding? You'll never do that. There's never been a kid from our neighborhood who went to college. There's never been someone from this department who made vice president. Remember the last time you tried? It was a total failure. You always work late. Why not take the night off and go shopping with us? Hey, I'll even buy you dinner. Don't come crying to me when the whole thing blows up in your face. They'll never let a college student do that. Why try? You always gain the weight back. Take it from me, I know. This whole idea is a mistake. You know, unfortunately, all too often, comments like these leave us wondering, what if I am making a mistake? What if I do fail? Suddenly you're telling yourself, yeah, they're right. Who am I kidding? I'll never be able to do that. Look, you got to spend more time with positive people. By contrast, you want people in your life who say, great idea. You can do it. Here's what you'll need. How can I help you? Positive people coach us. They mentor us. They're protectively helpful. They come through with ideas that help us expand on our goal. They make us believe we can achieve all that and more. And the good news is, positive people are easy to find. Perhaps they're part of your friendship circle right now. In fact, they might be delighted to spend more time with you. Remember, if you let toxic people steal your future, you have no one to blame but yourself. The truth is, toxic people often have tremendous power over us. They have the ability to change our minds and our hearts. They have the power to crush our self-esteem and diminish our passion, but only if we let them. A great example of this is something that happened in my own life. I spent 7 years of my life testing to get in as a police officer. At the time that we were doing it, it was a really hard time for people to get hired in law enforcement. There were strict hiring guidelines. There were a lot of people that were testing. And I always managed to get into the top 5 or 10% of the people that they had that would score on this list of hiring, but I would either get passed up or the list would end up being discarded after a period of time and they would have to start all over again. And you got to figure 7 years of this, I consistently kept testing, continually getting rejection after rejection. And after a while, you do start kind of second guessing yourself. But I found that I had not only really good friends who are still good friends of mine that reacted negatively to that, to me, as well as family. I had people tell me, look, man, you've tried for 7 years. It's time to forget it. No one's going to hire you. They're not looking for an individual with your background or your experience or your abilities. They're looking for other people. They're being mandated that they have to hire other people. So there was a whole mirage of different reasons that people would give me for that. And I almost bought into it. Almost. You see, if it wasn't for my best friend, my wife, who I was able to talk to, who was my constant rock at that time, who constantly encouraged me, who was there to help me with anything that I needed. And at that time and point in my life, it was the encouragement that I needed. And I remember one night we had a really deep, good conversation about it because I had just talked to one of my best friends, and he had told me that I was wasting my time and that I needed to wake up and just face reality. And I was talking to Stacy that night and telling her this and how it made me feel and asking her if she thought he was right. And the conclusion that I came up with the help of my wife, was that I was going to continue to go and I was going to continue to test. I was going to continue to put myself out there because I came up with this conclusion. I have to look at myself in the mirror every day. If I can look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I tried. I did everything in my power to. And I didn't make it because it was not a lack of trying on my part. I had to be able to live with that. And I didn't feel that I would be able to live with myself if I just gave up and I didn't keep going, because the rest of my life, I would always have in the back of my mind, what if? What if I would have tested just one more time? What if I would have tried just one more time? And I can tell you it was shortly thereafter, not even 6 months later, that I did get hired. And I did start my career in law enforcement at that time. So the difficulty for most people comes in deflecting these things. You got to remember not to give into it. And don't get into their toxic reactions. When they bombard you with guilt and they try to dissuade you or even manipulate you, try to turn you from your path, okay? If I can talk right, turn you away from the path that you're on. And try to tell you it's merely the negativity in play that they're getting into your head with. Setting boundaries and saying no often are the only tools that we have to combat those negative forces. So some tips for setting boundaries with toxic people. You got to remember, sometimes toxic people are our family members. Other times they could be coworkers or even your boss. In these cases, we can't just avoid them altogether, so we have to put boundaries in place to minimize their negative effects on our time, our priorities, and our self-worth. Now, there are several ways to do this. So here are a few tips that I have for you that will help you in being able to accomplish this. First, minimize your contact if possible. While most people are not fortunate enough to have their own personal assistant to take calls for them, if you do, simply ask your assistant not to put calls through from specific individuals that you name. And if you work independently and you answer your own phone, invest in a caller ID if you don't already have one on your phone. And don't return voice messages to those types of people. Or simply tell a toxic caller, you're on an important deadline and you can't take their call at that time. Spend holidays out of town. When Jack Canfield's toxic, alcoholic mother called to ask him if he would go to her home for Christmas, Jack would say, I'd really like to. It's not anything against you, Mom, but we plan to do Christmas this year with our kids in Hawaii. Now that she's sober and she has a more positive attitude, Jack has a plus next to her name now. and he finds ways to spend more quality time with his mom. Now, I would encourage you to do the same type of thing. Sometimes it's the hardest conversation that we have to have with somebody in telling them no, or explaining to them that we don't have the time to be able to spend with them, but it has to be done. And remember, the one phrase that he taught that I'm going to teach you right now is, it's not against you, it's for me. One response that's helpful in saying no to a crisis, appeals, or even time-robbing requests from people is using that phrase. It's not against you, but it's for me. When the local PTA chairman calls you with yet another weekend fundraising event that needs your dedication, you can say, I'd really love to, but the fact is I've made a commitment to spend more time with my family. I realized I had overcommitted myself outside of my home life. So even though I support what you're doing, now my commitment is my family. Now, few people will get angry at others for making and standing by a higher resolution or even a higher comment. And while techniques like these will get toxic people out of your life in very short order, you may experience emotional responses to your boundaries. Just remember, other people's responses are their responsibility, not yours. Remember, guilt is the real enemy. One of the most powerful weapons toxic people use is guilt. Where does guilt come from? It stems from our need for approval. All too often, we're more interested in how we're accepted than in the results that we produce. We risk giving in to our own feelings of guilt when we constantly seek others' approval. So if you want to be successful, you must give up the need for approval. You must give up guilt feelings and guilt responses that are the mind's natural reaction when seeking approval. Whether it's your mother, your school committee, the PTA chairman, your boss, or your friends, as long as you're willing to feel guilty, you can be manipulated away from the path to your success. W. Clement Stone made a statement to Jack Canfield that taught him the importance of this principle and how to avoid toxic people and surround himself with positive and successful people. And I want to share that quote with you. He said, "You're eventually going to reach a point in which you can put yourself in a negative situation and be a beacon of light like Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, or Mahatma Gandhi." People who bring others light don't need to have people affirming them or agreeing with them. They just hold that positive, unconditional, loving focus, which a spiritually enlightened person can do. However, most of us are not there yet, and until we are, one of the ways to get ourselves there is to stop spending time around negative people. It's very difficult at first, and I've had to let go of some friends of mine along the way. This doesn't mean you have to go back and eliminate all your negative friends from your life, but what it does mean is that you purposely choose where you put yourself. You have to make an effort to spend more of your time with uplifting and positive people. So, who would you rather spend time with? In the show notes, you're going to find a PDF for you to fill out regarding who you would rather spend your time with. In the meantime, you can write this down, the names of all the people you spend time with on a consistent basis on a piece of paper, or if you're working or you're out driving or working out listening to this, paint a mental picture of these individuals in your mind and later download the PDF from the show notes. The individuals can be parents, children, colleagues, co-workers, spouses, neighbors, church members, classmates, teachers, people you do hobbies with, people you go fishing or hunting with, whatever it might be. After you make your list of people, put a plus or a minus sign next to each person's name. You're going to put a plus sign if you find that the majority of their influence on your life is positive, nurturing, and encouraging. You're going to put a minus sign if that person's influence is predominantly negative. Jack Canfield refers to these individuals as psychic vampires to describe people who, when you're with them, they leave you feeling drained as opposed to uplifted. They literally suck the life out of you. We're talking about the main energy of these two kinds of people, positive or negative. If you're not sure, just guess. If it seems like a 50-50 chance for either one, just pick one of them and don't worry about it. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time you go through this. You now will have a list of people whom you consider to be both positive influences as well as people you consider to be a negative influence in your life. You can do whatever you want with that, but I encourage you to find ways to expand the time you spend with the positive people in your life and figure out how to spend less or no time with those who are negative. There is a principle that's called the law of the vacuum. If you eliminate negativity in your life and you focus on the positive, you created a space that has to draw in the positive. This is the law of attraction at work. So if you eliminate something negative in your life and you don't replace it with a positive, the law of the vacuum will pull that negative back in. Also, if you start adding more positive friends into your life, some of the more negative ones will eventually drift or fall away. Point is this: it's critically important to intentionally choose the people you're spending time with. You will tend to take on the mindset, the motivations, and even the mannerisms of those individuals that you hang out with. If you want to be more successful, you need to spend more time with people who are already successful and with people who are just as committed to becoming a successful person as you are. You need to surround yourself with other positive, encouraging, and solution-oriented people. You have to choose to spend more time with friends and colleagues who are successful and positive and supportive of you and your goals. Look for and join groups that include people who found success in areas in which you are interested in. Professional associations, conferences, local meetup groups of like-minded individuals or groups of entrepreneurs or even business owners such as young entrepreneurs or organizations or if you're self-employed in one-person business, there are co-working spaces in most cities where you can rent a desk or have an office and work from and have other aspiring solopreneurs around you. Or you can also attend lectures, workshops, courses, trainings, boot camps, or even retreats that are conducted by those who have already achieved what you want to achieve, that are attended by people who are equally committed to growing themselves, their careers, and their businesses. There are also women's groups specifically as well, such as groups for moms, nonprofit managers, senior executives, millennial women, or even baby boomers. But the point is, you need to find a mentor or a coach. You would also be wise to find that mentor or coach who can assist you by sharing what they know. So when you're looking for a mentor or coach, they should have both expertise and experience of having worked with individuals like yourself, helping to get you to where you want to be. Mentors are people who've accomplished what you want. They will help you clarify your purpose and your goals, and they'll help you plan for your success and help you in making better decisions and challenge your limited beliefs. They can be retired executives who've had multitudes of experience. Or if you're hiring a life coach or a business coach as well, they can help you with the frustrations of trying to discover winning practices or the things that you're struggling with. You know, with a business coach, you're more likely to achieve your personal, professional, and business or revenue goals a lot sooner, as well as reduce your expenses along the way because of the experiences and the things they're going to share with you. John Maxwell is another leader that I truly admire, and he once shared what he looks for in surrounding himself with individuals who embody these 12 qualities. I'm going to share those with you and make sure that we have this in the show notes for you as well. The first one, thinks about others first. This is critically important. You want to have that type of nurturing nature, and you want to associate with those people that think about others before they think of themselves. Number 2, they think bigger than themselves. They have goals, they have aspirations, they have dreams. They're always wanting to achieve more. There's a quote that Ed Milet gives that I love and I use all the time when people ask me how I am, and I tell them I am blissfully dissatisfied. In other words, I am happy. I'm excited about what I have right now and what I'm achieving, but I want more. I have goals and dreams, and I still have other things that I'm going to achieve and other places that I need to go. And the only way I can do that is by continually challenging myself. Number 3, that person has a passion that's contagious. You find people like that you want to be around with because of the way they make you feel. It is contagious. So find those people. That person offers complementary skills. They're always trying to teach you how to better yourself. Number 5, they're a great support. Number 6, they possess a can-do spirit. Number 7, they have an expanded influence. They have other people that they're going to be able to bring into your life. They're going to motivate you and keep you at the level that you want to be at. Number 8, these individuals hold an activist mindset. They actively look for things that are going to better themselves. Number 9, they're a proven leader. They are a ladder builder. Okay? These people are continually growing and prospering. Number 10, they stand out from the crowd. It's obvious those individuals, it's why you want to be around them, because they've made that impression on you and everyone around them. Number 11, they create teamwork. They find things to better their team. They continually want to see others succeed as well. They bring them up to their level, just as you as a leader need to do as well. Bring people up to that level that they need to be at. And number 12, they make a difference. It is a notable difference. These individuals, you can see what their passions are and the things that they're wanting to do. And it's pretty doggone evident when you sit there and you look at them and you see it. So, which of these is important to you? Just like we did earlier, what I want you to do is put a check mark by them. What additional qualities or characteristics that aren't listed are important to you? Write those down too. This becomes your starting list for reading like valued people. You have to remember that great partnerships make you better than you are. They multiply your values, they enable you to do what you do best, and they allow you to help others do their best. It gives you more time, and it helps you fulfill the desires of your heart and compound your vision and your efforts that you're making. You know, for nearly 20 years, there was a mastermind group that met together through the 1930s and 40s that was called the Inklings. And the members of that group included J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, Warren Lewis, who was C.S. Lewis's elder brother, Roger Lancelyn Green, and also Adam Fox. The Inklings were literary enthusiasts who praised the value of narrative and fiction, and they encouraged the writings of fantasy. During this time, Tolkien had asked Lewis if he would look at a poem that he was working on, the Dea Lethrin, which consisted of more than 4,200 verses and told the story of mortal men who who escaped to the world of the elves and fell in love with an immortal elf maiden. Tolkien had been privately working on this for years, and given the unique nature of his work, Tolkien was apprehensive to share that, but Lewis agreed to read it. A day later, Lewis wrote to Tolkien expressing his enthusiasm. "I can honestly say that it is ages since I have had an evening of such delight, and the personal interest of reading a friend's work had very little to do with it." After his praise, Lewis then gave detailed criticisms as well as complaints about the individual lines that would soon follow. Shortly thereafter, Tolkien received a deeply thoughtful and comprehensive list of feedback, from the overreaching themes to suggestions for replacements of individual words. Now, Lewis also suggested specific revisions and even rewrote sections of the poem. Tolkien, on the other hand, appreciated Lewis's perspective and heavily revised his poem to include many of Lewis's suggestions. This was incredibly risky for Tolkien and for his perspective to share his work with Lewis, to expose himself and his art so deeply. But after providing the feedback on Tolkien's work, Lewis took the similar risk of sharing his own poetry with Tolkien, who likewise provided substantial and unsparing critique and feedback. Decades later, in 1965, after writing his epic trilogy and experiencing wide success, Tolkien wrote a letter to Dick Plotz, speaking of C.S. Lewis. He said, "He was for long my only audience. Only from him did I ever get the idea that my stuff could be more than a private hobby. But for his interest and unceasing eagerness for more, I should never have brought." Decades later, in 1965, after writing his epic trilogy and experiencing wide success, Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings to a conclusion. He would have never had the courage or even the confidence to complete The Lord of the Rings without C.S. Lewis. Even more, without C.S. Lewis's feedback and his encouragement, Tolkien would have been unable to create such an awesome and masterful work. Tolkien needed somebody. He needed somebody with positivity, somebody that could give him that perspective and also be fully transparent and truthful with him, and doing it with love and with encouragement. This is what this principle of succeeding is all about. If J.R.R. Tolkien had never surrounded himself with successful people, The Lord of the Rings and his other works would have never come about. C.S. Lewis's association with J.R.R. Tolkien as well would never have come to light, and the Chronicles of Narnia would not have existed. There is absolute power in being around successful people and what they do to us. They increase our desire, our willingness to improve, and they give us the encouragement that we aren't getting anywhere else to continue to push forward for the things that we're desiring and wanting to accomplish. My encouragement to you is to now go out and find your group of mentors. Find your C.S. Lewis. Find your J.R.R. Tolkien. Find who it is that's going to elevate you to a new level and encourage you to get better and better, and to not hold back and to keep you accountable. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of The Language of Leadership, and I would ask that you please share this episode and others in the Language of Leadership podcast with those that you are associated with that would benefit from the information and the things that we're bringing to you to help you improve yourself as a leader, and also being able to elevate the lives of those around you to help them also become the people they're meant to be. So until next week, when we bring you another episode, be the leader your team will want to follow. Take care. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. This podcast is dedicated to help you navigate your leadership journey. You will learn the language and skills you need to be the leader you want to be. Remember, the language of leadership is an art. It is why your team wants to follow you. Take care.